Hi, and welcome to Talk Tuesday. I'm here today with Madeleine Taylor. Madeleine from People Skills. Madeleine is a social worker, a mediator, a negotiator, a conflict partnership facilitator, and a certified executive coach. Wow. And I know from talking to you previously, you've worked on some seriously impressive projects and been part of some defining moments in history. But we're going to skim over all of that today and focus on another of your areas of expertise, and the one that I feel all parents can learn from. I know I have, and that is raising a likable, responsible, respectful children in an age of overindulgence. So I'm going to read a few things from this program and then let you walk us through some of the topics. But first, I'm going to say hello, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Kia ora, thank you very much for having me on your talk today.
Fabulous. Right. So, Madeleine, you trained under Gina Ellerslie Clark in the US with her course Raising Likeable, Responsible, Respectful Children. And this is a fascinating concept, and there's so much goes into it. And there's so many things that sometimes I go, that seems quite counterintuitive to some of the things we've been taught and we're thinking about and we're doing. So I will start with too many toys, too many clothes, too much stimulation, too many activities, too many choices, too much of anything can slow a child's growth. Now, as a parent, I'm not enthused about anything that could potentially slow my child's growth. So can we look at these as separate items? You know, firstly, too many toys or clothes. How does this slow growth?
So let's have a think about if you've overeaten, how do you feel? When you feel about being, your tummy is too much, it's too full rather, and you feel bloated and extended. For those of us who drink alcohol, if you've had one too many glasses of wine, what does that feel like? It doesn't feel very good. You're clumsy, perhaps you're not at your best. And thinking about overworking, what does that feel like? We're exhausted, we're resentful, there's a whole lot of things. So as we grow up, we learn how much is enough. And as we are supporting our children's growth and development, they need to know how much is too much for them. And so if we are providing opportunities, anything that money can buy, whether that's food or clothing or toys or experiences, and they don't get a choice in that, then they don't learn the really important lessons of how to be able to know what's enough for them. And as they grow older, if they don't get a choice for what's enough for them, what does that mean when they go into relationships with other people? How does that impact on their ability to be able to be a confident adult in the world? What happens when they go on a date and somebody says, have another drink, or I want to take you out and, have sex, for example. And so all of those choices that they don't get to practice because we as parents make decisions on behalf of them, means that they don't have that practice for decision making as younger children. And they also don't get to learn about the consequences when they're little of overdoing things. Or if they're always given too much, then that becomes their normal. And therefore they learn that they can have things to excess, too many clothes, and so they can't even fit the next thing in the wardrobe. Too many toys, they can't choose between what it is because there's no differentiation. Too many activities, and I hear parents talking all the time about the fact that they're exhausted and the children are tired, and often children go to various activities and they actually don't want to be there. They're motivated because their parents want them to be there, but actually they don't have any skin in the game about it. So for many, many reasons, it means that we give too much to children. It means they can't differentiate about how much is enough for themselves. They cannot learn, and they hand over their lives, their decision-making lives, to their parents, which means that they end up not being very confident as adults.
All of that makes so much sense when you say it like that. You know, that makes it seem so straightforward that actually in giving too much of that treating, we're actually not serving our children in the best way, because we're not teaching them, you know, some of the common rules that we all live by and we all have to live by as we get older.
Yeah. The other part about that in terms of treating is that if every day is a treat day, then the treats become ho-hum and not special.
Yeah.
And so therefore, if everybody gets a turn at blowing out the birthday candles, for example, even if it's not your birthday, because the younger sister wants to blow out the candles, what does that mean for the young child whose birthday it is? How do we respect them in their special day if everybody else gets to have a turn? So there's many ways that we overindulge our children by allowing them to do things perhaps that aren't helpful for their ongoing ability to be able to see themselves as separate but part of a community.
Right. And too much attention. Now, most people would question, how is that bad? You know, obviously we love our children dearly, and we want to, you know, we want to lavish them with attention. We want to make them feel valued and special and that we love them. So how can too much attention be bad?
So let's say, for example, a child maybe falls over. Now, if we wait to see what that child needs after they've fallen over, perhaps they need nothing from us. But actually, if they've fallen over and injured themselves, we need to ask them, how are you doing in this situation? What help do you need? Because we're helping them to think about looking after themselves and caring for themselves. Imagine if we're over nurturing and we rush in and we say to the child, oh, darling, are you all right? Oh, poor you, let me pick you up and I'll carry you. Oh, aren't you gorgeous? Oh, you're a brave little girl. Aren't you fantastic? Or aren't you just a tough little buddy, or whatever language that you want to say. Then what we're doing is actually that child probably didn't need all of that attention. But what they'll do next time, because you gave it to them, is that they will act up in order to get it. Now, is that what we want to do in terms of acknowledging our children's development? We want to acknowledge them for being competent. And if our acknowledgement of them means that they become whiny and pretending that they're sore when they're not really sore, then that can create problems further down the track, because we're paying attention to their incompetence.
Right. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Now, chores. Now, this is often a point where parents take opposing sides. One camp thinks children should participate, and the other feels kids should be kids. So what does your training say?
Well, I think that we learn to become competent by being able to do things. We don't learn to become competent at riding a bike by just getting on the bike. We have to practice, right?
Yeah.
So when we're learning to create any skill, we need to be able to do it from the first step, learning very, very basic things. And so if we want to learn anything, we have to scaffold till we get to be expert at it. So I think that it's really important for children to be able to learn to do jobs around the house, not only for their school development, but also to realise that they're part of a community and part of a family, and that everybody's effort matters. And so that if a 3-year-old's job is to put the toys away, for example, and they don't do that and hurt themselves. And so the child then learns that they are important, that they do have skills that matter within the family. And so as we are growing our children, we have to help them to learn that they can walk into an early childhood centre from the time that they can walk, instead of that overdoing it and carrying children in, for example. That even though that doesn't appear to be a chore, because we're rushing as parents these days, we feel it's easy to pick up the bags and go into an early childhood centre. And we forget actually that the children have the capacity to do that themselves. And so what we're actually saying to those kids is, you're incompetent, I have to do it for you.
Right. And so what happens if you get to the teenage years and you didn't do the training when they're 3, and suddenly you've got a teenager and you ask him to do a job and they go, huh? Why should I do a job?
And so one of the really interesting things is that if you have a look at a lot of advertising at the moment, what it's looking at is that parents are now becoming the servants of their children. And marketing is having a really marked impact on undermining parents' sense of leadership and who they are in the family. And so I really encourage parents to observe the messages that they're getting from around the community and through our media, in order for them to be critically aware of the fact that the reason that that's happening is to make you feel stink about yourself as a parent, so that you'll buy stuff that the kids nag you to buy.
Yeah, quite.
And I think that sets up, that's a whole nother level of dynamic that's occurring in this situation, because parents are parenting in where no parents before have had to cope with the media. They've not had to cope with an online world. And so a lot of that is actually undermining your basic role as a parent. And it's really hard work. And I absolutely take my hat off to parents who are swimming against the tide in order to raise these wonderful young people.
And I have to say, my boys have always done jobs, and I'm real big on jobs. But it is really challenging. I've got a teen and a tween, and we are in a world that we haven't seen before. And my teen tells me repeatedly, but Mum, you don't understand, because this is different. This isn't like when you grew up. And of course it's not. And it's not even like 10 years ago. It's very different, the immersion, of course, in all the media and the social media and the, as you say, being absolutely bombarded, not just daily, but, every second.
That's right.
With all this information. And it is very difficult as a parent to navigate that path.
And so one of the really important things is to have some clear values in your family, and to have some ideas about how you each want each other to be in your family, and what are the jobs that each of the kids need to learn to do so that they become competent and able going into the future. Now, when they come back and they push against those boundaries, that's when you know that you're being a good parent. Because actually, if you're not there, then what the message is that they don't matter enough for you to comment.
Right. Yes. Okay.
Even though that it's difficult, what they're learning is that you're noticing and you're taking care to support them to be a really competent person. And the other part of that is that, as they grow and develop and become in the world, if they haven't had any feedback about their ability to do a task well, and they get into the workplace or even into university or in their school, if they don't get feedback about how well they're doing and knowing that there's a standard, then actually they become undone, because they've been told all their lives that they're fantastic, special, gorgeous, and actually when they come to actually do their work and they hear that something's gone wrong, they take it on board and they think they are wrong, not the piece of work that they've done. So their identities get tied up with their behaviour, as opposed to seeing themselves as an individual with worth, regardless of their attributions or their positions.
Yeah, and I mean, I see the pride in my boys if they cook a meal and they present it to the family and we're rapt that they've done it. Of course, they feel great because they feel like they've done something special, and they have.
Yeah, that's right. And so that sense, the way that we grow and know that we're competent is because we do things and we have a standard to reach and we succeed. We don't get that feeling of being competent just being told that you're a good person.
No, absolutely not. No, that's great. Now, this is another interesting one. Overindulgence can be the process of giving things to children to meet the adult's needs, not the child's. Now, how does that work?
Okay, so just imagine you're in the supermarket and you have a toddler and you're going through the checkout and they go, I want. And as a parent, you're thinking, oh my gosh, all these people are watching me and are judging me as a parent. If I just give that thing to the child, then they'll be quiet and nobody will look at me again.
Mm.
And actually what that child needs is for you to say, we don't buy those things at this time. We've done all our shopping, and there is a limit, and support that child to feel that they want something and then get told, no, there's a boundary, and for the child to learn to self-soothe so that everybody can get on with their day. And the really difficult thing is that we often don't do that because we feel judged.
Yes, absolutely. And it is really difficult. It's very difficult when everybody's staring at you and you feel that you're failing as a parent.
Absolutely. And the other thing too is like, say for example, we've had a difficult situation with one of our children, and so therefore we're worried about the safety and the future and the health of the subsequent children, and so we over care for them, we coddle them, we helicopter parent them. That's to take care of our own needs of being scared.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
And if we're thinking about the idea of giving too much to children, often because we're time poor and we haven't got time to spend with our children, we will give them lots of adventures and lots of overseas travel perhaps, or we might buy them things that we don't necessarily actually can afford even, but because we feel we will then give them these opportunities. The next thing too is that perhaps if we don't have enough money, or we don't have a lot of money, then sometimes we break the rules because we're feeling that our children are missing out, and so we let them stay up later, or we let them, wander off and have that freedom, because actually we aren't able to buy them things. So in different circumstances, we may well overindulge in different kinds of ways.
And we're sort of compensating it.
Absolutely. And each of those is a compensation for the parent because they're feeling bad about what of the particular circumstances are. But actually we're forgetting that our job is to be able to teach our children things that enable them to be able to cope in this modern world. And those things are about being able to know their skills and talents, whatever they are, to be able to understand how to communicate really well with people, to be able to deal with difference, because we are confronted more and more with people who are different from us, and that's not bad, it's just is, and therefore we need to be able to have the communication skills to manage that.
Superb. So here's another one. Overindulgence is giving a disproportionate amount of family resources to one or more children in a way that appears to meet the children's needs but does not, so children experience scarcity in the midst of plenty. I'm going to need you to unpick this one for us as well.
So idea that mum and dad are really busy, and so what they do is they give kids lots and lots of toys, for example, which keeps the children entertained for a while, but what the child's really wanting is time with their parents. And so what's occurring is that we're purchasing time, toys or experiences or clothes. Again, it's that whole compensation for things. So children are feeling like they're not acknowledged, they're not really part of their parents' lives. In fact, I heard a story just today where the youngest in the family, who's at early childhood centres, even during the holidays, are often maintained at that early childhood centre from 7 in the morning until 6 at night, despite the fact that it's a school holiday, and the older children are at home with the parents.
Right. Yes.
So some of the ways that we are interacting with our children is really interesting, I think.
Yeah. No. That's yeah. So I love this one. How to say no. I mean, I know a lot of us struggle with saying no. I also know that saying yes is often easy, and especially in these days, because we've raised these children to be strong, independent, to be able to have a voice and to be able to debate things, which is great until you get a teenager And then, of course, you're battling with someone who's on an intellectually is on the same level, and of course is very forthright in their opinion. So do you have any great insights and strategies as to how we say no?
Yes. So firstly, I think if we have a clarity about the values and the way that we interact as a family, so we might have a rule that we don't shout at each other. And so if we have any breaches around those things, then we may say to our children, whatever you're saying, the answer is always going to be no, because you're not interacting in a way that I can respond. So we're having an overarching kind of value around that. The other thing is to be really clear about what the rules in the family are. So, and what the children know that they are, and what you know that they are, and how do we renegotiate those each birthday or each term, so that kids are really clear about not only their jobs and their chores, but what the rules of the family are and where people need to go, so that there's an agreement around that. Because sometimes we just expect our kids to know what the rules are without actually talking to them.
Right. So would having some written rules, would that, or a contract, would that be helpful?
So I think it depends the way that you interact. It might be good to talk about it. It may also be really useful to write them down, and so that the children have access to them, so that they can go and read them. And if they're preschoolers, you might want to use pictures, so you can have a think about how to do that. Now, there was a really lovely idea that came out of a workshop that I ran in Gisborne just this last week, where a woman was talking about supporting kids to take action on things. And they were going, I want. And so the idea is to say, when this happens, then we can do that.
Right.
So when you have hung up your bag, then we can have our afternoon tea. When you have had your bath, then we can have a book. When you have done this, then you can do that. And so you're helping the children to make decisions about things.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So the other thing about saying no is to have some really good lines in your head. No, I'm your mother, and no means no. Making sure that we are consistent in our facial expressions, because if our kids are doing something really cute and going, no, no, then
yes,
we're going to give in at some point.
Yeah.
Being able to say, I want you to go and have a look at the rule about this, so that you're not always having to say no. Asking the children the question, does that fit in with our family values? And so helping children to understand those as well. And if we're saying no about money things, then you might want to have a conversation about budgets and their pocket money, and how much they're allowed to spend, and the things that you buy and the things that they buy. So you're setting up all of those conversations so that when you get to the moment, you have something that, if you like, that help you to make those decisions.
Right. And so what would you do? You've got the screaming toddler in the supermarket, screaming for the chocolate in the supermarket aisle. What would you do in that situation?
So in that situation, I would be picking up the person, looking at them in the eye, and saying, remember what we agreed when you scream? We're leaving now.
Right.
And let's go. Yeah. Take your handbag with you, but leave your groceries. You might want to say to the lady, I'll be back, at some point.
Right, okay. That's pretty full on.
Yeah, it is. It's hard work. The other thing is that you may not, for a period of time, take that child to the grocery store. You might want to think about how else you can manage your groceries.
Right, okay.
And, it's a lot cooler to do it in the evening if you've got another parent at home.
Yeah. Although, I've always taken my boys shopping, even though they haven't enjoyed it, because I feel, well, I've got to go shopping. So you need to understand that that's how food gets into the house, and I'm not the slave, so why should I go shopping?
We're just talking about that moment of children behaving really, really badly, and how do we shift that dynamic? And because if we can't make threats and then not carry them out,
Right.
and children must have a sense of what the expectation is that you're going to do before you do it, so that they can help decide whether or not they should behave like that. And you know, the more that you do it early on, the more that it just becomes a part of the family interaction, so that when they start acting up, you can say, well, your choice is to act up and we go, or to be able to gather yourself and for us to keep shopping. Which do you want to do?
Right. Yes.
So that
Okay.
you're not entering into the drama.
Yeah. No.
Now, and I know that's really hard when we're tired, and you know we've you know, other things have gone on, and the most important thing is to know that we can't parent perfectly, and that we will always make mistakes, but our kids are resilient, and most of the time, if we get it right, our kids will be fine. But to recognize that when we are under a lot of stress, that we need to take care of ourselves so that we can be the best that we can be. And as children see us taking care of ourselves, they will learn to take care of themselves as well.
Yeah.
And you're modeling that self-care and that good ability to recognize when you're vulnerable or when things are tricky, and take a breath and calm yourself down.
No, that's awesome advice. That's great. So helplessness versus competence. How do we nurture one rather than the other?
Yes, so I think that one of the things that we often do is not see our children as being competent. And more, we are risk-averse community, and so we don't want to put our children at risk. But what we do by making the road really clear for them is not helping them to grist against the world, which means that actually they don't have any problem-solving skills, and they can't think, and and that creates anxiety and a sense of lack of control. So the more that we can allow our children to think and to problem solve, and to not solve it for them, to be able to be alongside as their cheerleader, but not actually do the work for them, the more they'll develop the neural pathways that help them find the ways to problem solve. And if you think about when I grew up, if we wanted the window in the car to go up, we actually had to wind the window.
Yeah.
Whereas today we just go zoom. And so the ability for our children to practice having to put effort into something to get an outcome has diminished. So if we want when old I am, but you know, and if you wanted to change the channel, you had to actually walk up and turn a knob on the box. Whereas today we have so many options, and many families have so many devices that we don't even have to negotiate between each other. So the thing that I'm talking about there is that we don't have the practice of waiting, of putting ourselves second, of being able to allow other people to have a different opinion, and to watch something, and for us to have to sit there and watch something that we don't particularly want to watch, because we all have access to that stuff.
Yeah. Okay, raising grateful and respectful children. So top tips on that.
Well, if we have to do jobs around the house, then we recognise the effort that we put into it, which means that we're more likely to take care of things. If we've had to work to buy an object that we value, then we're less likely to lose it. We're less likely to leave it lying around on the playground. We're more likely to take care of those things for ourselves. The things that we've been talking about chores, about rules, about taking responsibility to be able to support our children to be competent, all of those things build up to children being able to recognise the value that other people have put into the effort that they have contributed to something. So for example, like a meal, taking the time to say thank you. But if we're always buying it from the supermarket, or unwrapping it from a takeout, then we've already seen thank you because we paid it at the supermarket checkout. And so we don't actually get into the habit of being grateful for the effort that's gone into creating it.
Mm.
And so again, we have to create different and new opportunities for our children to be able to practice being grateful. We don't have those systems in our society as much as we used to. Not that I'm saying it was the good old days, I recognise I'm a boomer, but the impact on our children means that they don't have enough, they don't have as much practice, which means that when they get to be older, they are very, if we don't take account of these things, the risks are really huge to becoming egocentric, me, not being able to be competent in managing relationships and actually being competent about looking after themselves and managing their own physical health and mental health.
Right, yes. Okay, so poor self-control, have you got any advice or any simple strategies we can apply? Because, there are...
So I think it's the idea, yeah.
Go ahead, go ahead.
So what I'm thinking about there is the research about the amount of time our kids spend on devices is disturbing. And in Australia now, preschoolers, a third of them now have their own screen, 1/3 of them. And so I can see that that's starting to happen in New Zealand now. And what the research says is that our children who spend actually end up with having brains that are needing instant reaction, so we don't have that sense of delayed gratification, and being able to be patient for things. And so the research from the I think it's the Ministry of Health, they talk about no screen time whatsoever, and that includes like having your photo taken for children between the babies up till 18 months. And then 18 months to 6 years, less than an hour a day. And then for the rest of us, being 6 years old, no more than 2 hours a day. So none of us can do that, right?
Well, that would be impossible because lots of the schools now, of course, the kids are on devices for maybe 4 hours a day at school. And when you get to the teenage, I know at college, my son could be on it for 6 hours a day.
Yeah, so what they're saying is that what we're foregoing is exercise and moving and impacting on our eyesight, a whole range of things that are causing us to be able to manage our lives because we're human beings on this planet. So that's one of the impacts that has on our ability to be able to delay gratification, because we're expecting these things to happen to us because our brain is now wired to be excited and to be having an endorphin hit, every couple of seconds, probably more than that. And of course, all of the games that are designed to keep us online for long periods of time, because then we come across the advertising that makes us want to buy stuff. So it's all a marketing ploy.
Absolutely. And they're all designed to suck you in and keep you on there and everything else. Yeah. Well, I'm going to talk about that delayed gratification because I know from my family that my eldest son was born 3 years before my youngest son. And my eldest son would say, "Can I have a drink?" And he would expect the drink to come. Now, he was used to being a single child, an only child with two parents who doted on him. So his expectation is, I ask for a drink arrives. And of course, as loving parents, we'd be providing the drink. My second son was born and our situation was totally different. And I had an older child and we were deep in the middle of a really stressful time with our business. So he asked for a drink and it's like, you know what? It'll come when I'm ready. And so just that difference I've noticed, and I noticed that for years and years and years, where Max would be, "I need it now," and Joe would be like, "When you're ready."
Yes.
"I'm waiting." So it makes such a difference the way that yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And that our parents weren't so over involved in children's lives back in the day. Whereas nowadays, if we don't have an interaction on a device, we worry desperately about what's happening to our children. And, you know, because telephones weren't a thing, you know, you didn't have a handheld device.
No.
Most of the time you didn't go anywhere near. And that's changed our brain, really.
Wow. Okay, so if we had to summarize and we had to say, you know, we are living in this modern world, and whether we like it or not, that's how we're raising our children. You know, what would be your best tips for overall? So how can we ensure that we're not overindulging our children? You know, what are some of the top things that we can do as parents?
So get them to do the work, you know,
Yep.
to be part of the community, so that their input, spend time in big muscle activities, doing things outside in nature, in the environment, having times which are screen free, and being able to help children to think through their problems so that they can learn that they're okay and they've got ways of solving problems, and that they can soothe their own self, their ability to be able to do that. And the last one is, if we're feeling overwhelmed as parents, to get the support that you need, because if we can't do that, then our children will witness us being not at our best. So get the support that we need as parents, and therefore, once, you know, happy parents or happy caregivers, happy kids.
Absolutely. Okay, so that was fabulous, Madeleine. That was really, really good. And I think that's just given us a really good general overview of some of the things. But I think some of those things might be a little bit shocking to parents, because
Yes,
we
I
are
know.
we are being brought up in an era where we're told to cherish and love and pour love and attention and make sure we're doing everything we can for our children. And in some ways, you seem to be saying the opposite.
I know, that's it's really hard. And the question is, do we want to raise our children to be able to be competent, to be able to cope with the world? And because materially most of us are doing pretty well now, we need to help our children to be able to manage this and have really good, strong, loving relationships in ways that they get to learn what they're competent at. Because our job as parents is to support our children to be as competent as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And as independent as possible too. Yeah, absolutely. So if parents want to get in contact with you, or if I mean, I know you do talks around the overindulgence, and you even go to different cities and do that. How, what do you offer? What can people, sort of get from you, I guess?
So thank you for asking that. If people are wanting to learn about this, and also if they're wanting to learn about how to run a group or how to incorporate this material within their own work, then I do a retreat once a year, and the next one is coming up in February, and you can go onto my website. We also have a Facebook page called Understanding Overindulgence. If you want some coaching, then I provide coaching. And if parents are wanting, or groups of parents through schools or early childhood centres are wanting a fundraising opportunity, then I'm able to come and if you get everybody together and they pay a bit of money, then you can create a fundraising opportunity. And I've also said that I'm happy to go on holiday with families if I haven't been to their wherever they're going before, not as a nanny, but as a coach for the parents. But it has to be somewhere I haven't been before. That's a bit of a joke.
Yeah. I got that. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to post this up, so I'll put links to your website and to the Overindulgence Facebook page, and so people can get in contact with you. And obviously, if they struggle with that, they can always contact me, and I can put them in touch with you. And thank you so much for coming on today. That's been really interesting. And actually, I have to say, quite confronting, because I feel like you are swimming against the tide of everything else we're being bombarded with. But sometimes that's a really good thing.
Yeah, but also remember, we always parent with a good heart. Our job is really hard, and none of us think, oh, how can I wreck my kids today? We're all trying to do the best thing that we can do. And so, you know, we do need to give ourselves a break and take that breath and think, what can I do to help myself to be able to be a competent parent? But
Yeah.
yeah.
No, that's wonderful. Thank you so much, Madeleine. That's been fabulous. Really appreciate you giving your time. It's been a really interesting 45 minutes.
Thank you very much.
Okay, bye.